Now, if you were hoping to talk perhaps about Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, or the Targaryens or Games of Thrones, or maybe a comparison between Smaug and, not sure which one, if this is Drogon or not, but I think it is, or the old Smaug from the cartoon series, The Hobbit, that's not what we're going to be talking about. What we're really looking at here is the way the world was perceived before the age of exploration. Mariners at the time stayed close to shore because out in the water was unknown. And the cartographers of the time would create maps and they would say, here be dragons in those areas that hadn't been explored yet. And that's where we are. Here be dragons. We're going to be talking a little bit about the gaps in between what an enterprise needs versus what a consumer needs. Here's a gap. And I'm guessing your first question would be, well, why would Zebra present this? Well, especially me in particular. And a little bit about Zebra. You may have noticed Zebra printers in use at places like Lowe's or other competitors to Lowe's, like the Home Depot. The location and motion sensing is used by the NFL to track players. RFID for logistics training, etc. The division I work for, and I've been there for about 25 years now, is the enterprise mobile computing. And that's the mobile computing part that you see there. We've got about 6,500 people across the globe, 4,600 patents, close to $4 billion company. And we've been doing enterprise mobility for quite a while. In fact, enterprise is not new. The first barcode scanner came out in 1982. We've had mobile computers since the mid-90s. If you look closely, this is a DOS-based machine. DR-DOS we had on the first one. This is the 3100. Little scanner on the top could pivot. Over the years, we moved from DOS, Palm OS, Pocket PC, Windows Mobile, and now Android. What was once kind of a niche market has turned into quite a community of developers, maybe we could say. We've got quite a few of competitors in the market. Here's some of our Windows Mobile devices. So what we're talking about is the gap we have between the enterprise and the consumer. So on one side, you've got consumer. New OS every year, billions of users, lots of bad guys running around trying to steal data off of these devices. Lots of patches come out to protect us. But on the enterprise side, from the time that they start the development to the time they start deploying may take a year. So those first devices that started with an Android OS and we start deploying or start getting ready to be deployed won't find its way into the hands of the users for a year. And here you are already with another OS coming out. That'll change your whole deployment strategy. So a little bit of a history here. So when I was working in the Windows Mobile days, customers would take our devices, they would load their apps, configure the way they wanted to them, and those were called, they would lock it down at that point, never to be changed. We would build for them what we call the golden image. So it's a golden image, they would load this on any device that they got fresh out of the box, and that's the one that went out into service. Never changed. In fact, I can't say recently, but I've had customers come back after 6, 7, 8 years of using these products and those same golden images. Now they want to make a change. The mindset needs to change now. With Android having so many vulnerabilities at times, or severe vulnerabilities, maybe so many is wrong, severe vulnerabilities, if I could learn to speak, they need to be able to be ready to patch. So you got the consumer on one side, the enterprise on the other. And that middle area is what we're going to be talking about. There are Currently, actually, this slide is just a little dated. It's actually over 2 billion Android devices in use today. Of those 2 billion, 1 billion don't have the latest software on them. Half. So we're going to be talking about that area in the middle. On the right or left, on the left side, you have the enterprise, where we need to reconcile the security of the devices, to what we have on the consumer side, where we got one OS a year, plenty of patches, etc. So the question is, how can we kind of get these two together? So we're going to start with Android security with 3 paradigms. First, we want to build a solid foundation. Make sure the enterprise is using Android Enterprise. That's the base foundation. And Google has provided us with device owner mode and the DPM API to get us to a point where we can say we've got a solid foundation.
Here are the top search results.
Next is focus on the task. What do you want to use this thing for? Do you need to manage your devices? Will you have an EMM, Enterprise Mobility Manager? The AirWatches, SODIs, Mobile Irons of the world. Will you be running it in kiosk mode? That is a single purpose mode. Do you have a bunch of applications you need to use this? Is this a knowledge worker? So the kind of questions to ask to find out what the task is that we're doing. And then finally, security life cycle management. How are you going to make sure those devices are maintained, patches are in place, etc.? So we'll start with build on a solid foundation. A little bit of an eye chart, but what we're trying to show here on the in the rows are the columns. The columns is the different versions of the OS, and I've got in here iOS and Android, and along the side are all the security features. The key point to this slide is on the left side, the earlier versions, you see much more lighter blue, meaning it's very weak in that area, as opposed to the right side, where we've got the darker blue, much stronger. So if we got customers that are still running KitKat, and yeah, we still have customers running KitKat on some of our devices, they're missing out on new features or new security updates for the later versions of OS. Just an idea of the improvements that have been made for security from Lollipop onward. Lollipop introduced BYOD, we went to Marshmallow, you get KOSU, which kind of introduced device owner mode. At that point, Marshmallow, we felt, wasn't really at the right point to be enterprise Android. But once you got to Nougat, I think Google did a great job. They put us in a position to say, now Android devices are really secure and manageable for the enterprise. And now coming out with Oreo next, even improves things even more. Second is focus on the task. What do you want to do with this thing? This is kind of in my wheelhouse here, this part. The deployment, which is staging and provisioning of a device. You take a device out of the box, vanilla Android on it, right? Hasn't been configured yet, you don't have any apps on it yet. At this point, we want to be able to deploy. Think about an IT administrator now. Compare an IT administrator takes his personal phone and he wants to put an app on it. He goes to the Play Store, downloads the app, configures it, and moves on. Maybe he changes settings to on his personal device. The next day he walks into the office and there are 40,000 devices sitting in boxes in his office. I don't think he wants to touch 40,000 devices and load all the apps, set all the configuration parameters. That's what we call staging. At staging, you can use barcodes, pull a device out, power it on, scan a barcode to download your apps, install them, configure them. You could use NFC bump. There's also audio staging. And did I say NFC? Yeah, NFC is there. At that point, you load your management system, or through Zero Touch, you load the management system. At that point, the EMM registers with its server, takes over control of the device, downloads apps, whatever apps, from if you're using a managed Play Store or using the public Play Store, sets the device into device owner mode, and then the EMM can configure the device using managed configurations. I'm going to point managed configurations. If you're writing applications for the enterprise, take a look at managed configs. It allows your application to be managed or configured through an EMM as the device owner. This way nobody has to go in there and touch and configure. It can be done remotely from an IT workstation. Right? There's a console that the EMMs provide the IT administrator. Lastly, the security lifecycle management. And this is where things get, I think, in the uncharted area that we've been talking about. Okay, so what's the biggest concern for businesses? Buying new computers, security. Way too often we hear about security breaches and data being collected and blah. No company in the world wants to be on the front page of the New York Times. So they're concerned about security. Cyber attacks. Like I said, we've heard about those before. In order to maintain security, total cost of ownership takes a bit of a hit. It's going to cost them more money now to maintain all these devices. And in actuality, we'll get that to another side. Let me save that thought. The transitions are challenging. Some of us in the room may be feeling how it is to go from one OS to the next, a new set of devices. It's difficult to do. But we're running out of options. Those customers I mentioned before that had devices for 6 to 8 years, that's not going to be the real world anymore. They're not going to be able to do things that way. So the question is, how can Zebra, and this is what I'm going to come and ask, how did Zebra solve the problem of getting the enterprise to be satisfied with the 3 life cycle that the consumers are typically seeing today? And the answer is we didn't. We found a middle ground. And it's something that we call Lifeguard. Let me explain how we handled it here, and maybe what we've done can help you in your application development. As we talked about, in the consumer markets, consumer world, 3 years worth of updates for devices. You put your device there on the left side for 3 years. You kept it for 3 years, if you kept it that long. Traded in, got another one, moved back to the beginning. For the enterprise or for businesses, they're concerned about the return on their investment. If their return on investment is 4 years, swapping those devices every 3 years doesn't make business sense for them. So they want to go out further, and that's where Lifeguard comes in. What we've done is we've presented them with a way that they can manage their devices up through 5 years. If you think about it carefully, that means that for Android N and O, we still need to support KitKat. But Google doesn't, which is security patches. So what we've had to do, and we've taken on the responsibility of saying, what has changed in Android? What security patches have been added? And we backported them to KitKat. So now we haven't been able to satisfy up to 6, 7, 8 years, but we've given them the 5 years. And for many of our customers, that's sufficient. It gets them the return on their investment. So when considering your application, think about the life cycle of the device. You may have some customers who are using KitKat. So when you select that minimum SDK level, keep that in the back of your mind. Just want to take one example, Blueborn virus. One example of a vulnerability that has come out recently. You probably heard about it. So it was discovered April 19th. By August 7th, Google presented a patch. September 4th, security patch became available. Then finally it was disclosed on September 12th. By this time, Zebra had the changes for Blueborn ported all the way back to KitKat and into whatever products was necessary. So by the time it became public knowledge, we already had the fix in place, the patch was in place. So we've kind of getting closer. I like this quote. In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. But in practice, there is a difference between theory and practice. All of what I've been talking about probably kind of makes sense, right? We get customers have up to 5 years. They can get security patches all the way back to earlier versions of Android. But this is not really what happens. In many cases, customers are reluctant to move from one to the other. Because, like we talked about originally, it costs money to have to port or change your OS. So this is where we need application developers to help us. Right? We haven't really solved the problem yet. The map still has some unknown areas in it. So from application developer, Google provides quite a bit of direction, best practices, other information to help you write your application to be secure. So you secure the data, whether it be at rest or in motion. At rest is data in the device, at motion is data traveling back to some server someplace. So look for things from Google regarding best practices. They also include the safety net APIs. I'm not sure if anybody's using them here, the safety net APIs. If you were writing, like, say, a banking app, you want to be able to protect the data going back and forth for the bank. Some of the things you need to worry about is the device already compromised before you even start? So there's the attestation APIs. Look to see if there are harmful apps already installed on the device. Is it compromised, not just the OS compromised, but has the user compromised it by loading something maybe not too good on it? And a few other things that are provided in the safety net APIs. Most importantly, know your code. I think there's a statistic here that says that, 60% of the code is typically third-party libraries. It's not new code. And where's the statistics? Yeah, down in the middle there. Down in the middle, 10 to 20% of new code, only 10 to 20% of new applications are really new code. The rest of it is stuff that came from a download from open source, came from a third-party library. So that tells us that 80 to 90% of our code, we really don't know. Now, a few statistics here. So Black Duck did a quick analysis of applications. They randomly grabbed 1,100 of them. Of those 78% of them, and these are applications currently available on the Play Store, had at least one security vulnerability. 54 of them were considered critical, and 17 actually still had well-known bugs in them that we already know how to fix. And here's where we're more concerned, right? Internet of Things applications. 77% of them used open source components and pulled in some security vulnerabilities. Google's trying to help. They've analyzed apps. I think they call this Play Protect. That's their term for it these days. They check for vulnerabilities. They'll notify you if your app has a problem. They give you time to fix it, 90 days. If you don't reply with a fix in time, they kick you out. And 383,000 of them needed to be fixed in the past 4 years. Actually, that number has gone up a little bit since we wrote this slide. Some more statistics here. 50% of app developers don't want to update to the latest libraries that may include fixes because they're concerned about incompatibility problems. I know I've done that. 85.6% of the libraries that are in use have at least one more version that you could probably pull in. So a couple of last few comments, some best practices. Make sure your third-party libraries have been reviewed. You've done your pen testing. Look at the frequency that they provide updates. Look at the documentation. Keep your eye on if there are changes. Plan for security updates to your apps. We plan for security updates to our OSs. And partner with the customer's IT. You've got somebody that you're working with, that you're selling your product to, work with them to help get the patches deployed properly. Update and sustain your libraries, security patches versus feature upgrades. Make sure you document. Mention your bug fixes, the CVEs that you're using. Ultimately, there are some unexplored areas. Customers won't do their upgrades because it might be painful. And maybe there's some opportunities here to make it less painful for the customers. So as when you're writing your applications, keep these kinds of things in mind. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.